Hello there, we are your hosts Vivek and Pavitra from the Agile Coach podcast. In this podcast, we bring fresh perspectives to you through our interviews with thought leaders in Agile coaching, facilitation, business analysis, and product management roles. Enjoy.
Today we have Adam Miner for the third time in the Agile Coach podcast. We are so excited to have you, Adam. Just as a quick intro, you already know Adam when he was working as a Scrum Master at Humana. He's got several years of experience as a Scrum Master, and now currently he's been working as an Agile Coach. We're super excited to go into his background, how he, what has been his journey going from a Scrum Master role to an Agile Coach role. So with that, we're going to kick it off. Adam, thanks for coming to the show. The first question I'm going to throw at you is like, what has it been like going from a Scrum Master role to an Agile Coach role so far?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, Vivek. And I think it was actually a little bit less difficult than maybe I had thought it would be originally. Because if you're not just a good Scrum Master or an average Scrum Master, but if you're a great Scrum Master and you're involved in the operations of the organization, the chances that you've run into the impediments that Agile coaches run into is probably pretty likely. I didn't have the luxury of being raised in an environment in the Scrum Master space where I had a lot of Agile coaches. In a couple of roles, I didn't have any Agile coaches to mentor and coach me. So I had to seek that out outside of my 9 to 5. But I think what was also a learning opportunity for me in those roles was that I was forced to, even though I didn't have the title of Agile Coach, I was forced to assume some of those Agile Coach responsibilities.
Yeah.
And it gave me a pretty seamless transition. So when I got into the coaching role specifically with the actual title, the impediments that I was seeing weren't really new. They were a little bit familiar to me already. And I had a little bit of a sense of how to approach them and how to solve them, which I think was really helpful in that first, like maybe 6 to 12 months in the coaching role, because I wasn't seeing these things for the first time. You know, I had seen a lot of them as a Scrum Master, had worked to remove some of them in previous roles, which was really cool.
Yeah. And just to take a step back for a lot of folks who are just Scrum Master or new Scrum Masters or BAs, and they're really curious about Agile coaching role, what does that look like from your perspective?
Totally. And I think the most effective skill that anyone can develop in an Agile environment, at least in my opinion, is the ability to influence people. Not influenced by force, but influenced by organic trust and respect. And it's interesting that dynamic, if you can create it on the team level, right? If you have a really good, solid Scrum Master that can create a lot of respect and influence, organic influence with their team members, that skill set transfers really well up to leadership when you get there. Because interpersonal skill, I think, is typically pretty universal. You either have the skills or you don't. So the skills that you employ as a Scrum Master when you're developing trust and a relationship with your team members and your product owner, maybe some stakeholders, your boss, you know, that immediate circle of people that you work with, those same skills are pretty transferable when you're working with product directors or CIOs or VPs of product, right? Whatever the title is a little bit irrelevant, but the skill sets are pretty similar. So I think if I was a Scrum Master right now and I was thinking about moving into the Agile coaching role, I would just really work to develop that skill of developing organic influence with people, because what you're looking for in reality is behavioral change. On the team level, you're looking for behavioral change. And on the leadership level, you're also looking for behavioral change. So if you can develop it and hone it and really get good at it in a certain environment, I think it transfers really well when you get a promotion or you move into a new role.
Love it. What did you wish you knew about Agile coaching role when you're a Scrum Master? Like what did you underestimate? What did you overestimate about the role?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I overestimated was the level of Agile knowledge that you actually need. And, you know, we lose sight of it very often in corporations now, especially when they're large. You know, Fortune 500 companies are really large companies. We can lose sight of the fact that the manifesto is very short.
Mm-hmm.
All the founders of Agile gave us were values and principles within the manifesto.
Yeah.
So my North Star of coming in as a coach and identifying like where are the areas of improvement, what doesn't feel right, what needs to be changed. I don't care so much about the perfect Agile answer. My guidance is usually based on some type of principle or value that the Agile Manifesto mentions, and then you kind of reverse engineer it back into, a solution for that particular situation, because processes and situations are very specific. But if you understand the mindset of agility, if you really dive into the values and the principles and you take them to heart, you can apply that to any process or any situation that you run into. And it gives you kind of a higher level wisdom than if you're trained in a specific area in agility, that maybe you can ramble off really good glossary terms, or you have everything memorized, but you really don't know how to necessarily apply the information that you know.
So you're saying that you're saying that if you have the mindset and if you go into the organization, you pay attention, you talk to the people, you can figure out what needs to be done, a way to influence, build relationship, build trust. Versus like when you're a Scrum Master, sometimes you might think, oh, I need to understand Lean. I need to get certified as an SPC or understand these frameworks. I see what you're saying.
If I could riff on that maybe a little bit more, I just, and maybe for better or worse, I don't know, Vivek, just to be a little bit humble with you and your audience here. I don't necessarily know that I have all the answers. And I'm a little bit skeptical of coaches that I run into that think or seem to have all the answers, because no one knows everything. So for someone to just regurgitate a very specific solution on something without collaborating with the people around them to understand what's actually happening on the ground floor or what the other people in the room are thinking or experiencing, to me seems a little bit counterintuitive. And, yes, you can be an expert on, TDD and BDD and these engineering strategies that are quote unquote agile. And that's great. I would never knock anyone for studying that. But if you don't employ a combination of the agile mindset, values, principles, plus the interpersonal skill of actually working with people, plus the agile knowledge, if one of those three is lacking, your level of impact is probably going to be reduced. So it's not about having answers in one or the other. It's kind of about having an application of all three.
Yeah, no, this makes sense. This is actually, I had a conversation with a really solid product manager, and he was saying the same things, that it's not like you learn all these frameworks and are really skilled and you go into the team and you have them try these new frameworks. It's really more about really meeting the teams where they're at, really understanding, really listening, building relationship, and collaboratively coming up with a solution. So definitely resonates with me. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you faced, specifically working with teams, management teams, product teams, anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think fear of change is present pretty much constantly. And especially as a coach, when you move away from the team level, or at least somewhat moving away from the team level, you get into a level of leadership there, whether it's product directors or VPs or CIOs, they're in those roles for a reason. It's not like they haven't had any success doing things the way that they've done them. So it's kind of a paradox when you get to that level and you try coaching at that level, because you're working with people that are very successful and they naturally probably have a lot of accomplishment, which has developed, for better or worse, some type of a positive ego towards their knowledge and their skill set. And it's sometimes difficult to convince them that changing the way that they think is necessary to achieve a different result. I've seen this, somewhat recently in a couple of different companies, but the size of their work is a big point of contention because you have these antiquated individuals, and maybe antiquated isn't even the right word, but these very experienced individuals that have 20 or 30 years of IT experience, and they are used to a waterfall type of system. Mm-hmm. And even though we're starting to transition into agility, which is great, they're still used to releasing a lot of functionality all at once. Mm-hmm. And they feel like if they reduce what they release, it's going to cause a lack of trust with the consumer base because they're not going to get what they want. And as we know, right, Agile thinks about that differently. They believe in user testing, interviewing, releasing an MVP or an MMP very early in the process, getting feedback on, and then building incrementally after that. So it's a little bit difficult when you get to a certain level to convince leadership that, hey, like, I know you've had success in your realm. There's nothing wrong with that. Can we experiment with a little bit of a different way of working just to see what the results look like? And then it's a little bit of a negotiation tactic. It's not easy by any means. I think if you have other coaches on here, they would probably all tell you that working with leadership and management is probably one of their biggest difficulties, because it's not easy to change a mindset at that level.
100%. Yeah. And then the fact that, they're funding and they're hiring you. And when you come in, you're asking them, hey, can you just forget what you did? Let's just do some new stuff where they don't have the expertise. So yeah, I can only imagine. And the whole thing with, agility, responding to change, it's a simple thing, but actually responding to change and actually being open-minded and trying new things, that's a really messy process. So kudos to all the Agile coaches that are out in the trenches, doing the difficult work and getting, the leadership through different outcomes that they're intending to. So wanted to kind of go into a little bit more of your coaching style. I know there's some Agile coaches who have a strong training background. Some of them have more coaching experience through building relationship, trust, working one-on-one. So what is your style of coaching?
Yeah, this was actually a great learning experience for me in my first 6 months of being a coach, is that I had the opportunity to network with a number of other coaches at Huntington, and the diversity of the ideas really blew me away, because there were very senior coaches that seemed, at least for a little bit, more of a junior coach that hadn't had that title before, that they kind of knew everything. They could ramble off an answer on something like it was nothing. And it was a little bit intimidating stepping into that environment. However, the more time I spent around them, the more time that I started to develop my own ideas and my own thoughts and bringing my own experiences to the table. And it got to a point where I felt like I was able to respectfully disagree. And that's sometimes intimidating as a junior coach, or just any junior title or junior person, because you're like, well, they have so much more experience. They obviously know better than I do. But then as I started to challenge the status quo, respectfully, of course, empathetically, in some of the more public forums, I would have people reach out to me on the side and say, hey, thank you for challenging that. I didn't really agree with that either. And that gave me a level of confidence to say, oh my gosh, I'm developing my own style. I'm becoming my own person. I'm not a copy of someone else. And it gave me the confidence that I was actually able to sit at the table and be valuable, versus just feeling like I was there to fill a seat or to back up what was, already there. And another thing that I noticed when I stepped into that realm for the first time was that there's different biases of different coaches, depending on the background. You have some coaches that are former PMO members, right? They've been project managers or program managers or directors of PMOs. Or maybe you have product owners that went into director of product roles or product manager roles, and then somehow found their way into Agile coaching. And then you have the realm that I took, which is Scrum Mastery, into Agile coaching. And I think it took me a bit of time to realize that none of the perspectives are really that right or wrong, but we're all a little bit biased to the background that we have. And I think one of my personal brands that I've taken pride in is mixing this delicate balance of training and coaching. Because there are coaches out there, and I've worked with them in the past, that can give you a half-hour long answer on value streams or how to transition an organization from maybe a horizontal structure into a product and value stream structure, right? They're very knowledgeable in terms of the glossary terms and the definitions and the mechanics. However, they don't mix the other side of that, which is actually working with people. So I think it has to be a delicate balance of both, where yes, you have to know the agile terms, you have to know the values, you have to know the principles, you have to understand frameworks, you have to understand potentially Kanban and Scrum, and then some product management too to help coach organizations through that. But it can't just be that. I think that the best coaches that I found are very intentional about growing their communication skills and their leadership skills and their influence with people, maybe not even at their 9 to 5, but outside of their careers. And then they take that knowledge of how to interact with people and how to lead people organically, and they mix that with the knowledge of agility and the mindset, and they get this really cool balance of both. And it allows them not only to step into an organization and lead in terms of the integrity of the transformation, but they also are able to cause the behavioral change of the people that are actually going to execute on the work. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? In my opinion, and there are definitely coaches out there, like I said, that would have a different perspective on this, and that's totally fine. But I don't think that trainers are the most effective. And I also don't think that just life coaches are the most effective. I think there's a delicate balance of both, where you have to have the ability to train, but you also have to have the ability to sit in front of someone, connect with them, figure out what their biases are, and walk them through the absorption of the mindset to actually help them understand how to interpret agility and then apply it to specific situations. Because if they memorize processes or they only think about situations and they don't absorb the mindset, well, all that has to happen is one situation has to change, and they don't have it memorized anymore and they're lost. So it's definitely about both.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Just as a quick, I love that, how you articulated that. Just as on your plan, what areas are you planning on doubling down your strength as a coach, and what are some areas that you have in mind that, hey, these are the areas that I'm going to grow as like an enterprise coach? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think for any coach, and it took me a bit to learn this. Admittedly, it was not something that I understood in my first 6 or 12 months. But I think for any coach, the goal should be, how do you scale agile leadership? Because it's really easy as a coach, if you're in an organization that maybe doesn't have very strong Scrum Masters, or you have product owners that are new to the role, or you have development teams that are used to depending on a manager to answer their questions or to make decisions for them. It's really easy to get stuck in the weeds of working with a team in this indefinite loop. Because I can come in and I can run a refinement, right? I can help them understand that to really refine a user story properly, you have to think about not just size, but size, complexity, risks, and unknowns. But if I don't teach the Scrum Master or the business analyst or the BSA or the product owner or whatever, if I don't teach someone else how to facilitate when I'm not there, I'm stuck in this indefinite loop of coaching in a certain area. And that's especially important when you're in an organization that does not have a lot of agile leadership. And in my mind, I think to your point, that my current focus is making sure that the Scrum Masters on the team level are capable of adhering or like implementing Scrum and agility well. Because if the Scrum Master doesn't, nobody will. You're probably not going to have a product owner that's mastered agile and can facilitate as well as a really good Scrum Master can. And naturally, there is a very intentional reason why the Scrum Master role was put in the team in the first place. They were not meant to be a manager. They were not meant to be a business representative. They were meant to be a very intentional intersection between the team and the business that coaches the team on correct Scrum implementation. And as a result of that, helps the team become self-organizing and self-managing so that eventually they can work themselves out of a job. But I think any coach, right, should at least strive in some regard to work themselves out of a job by creating those like levels of agile leadership. Because if you're just on the team level, but you're not handling the managers, you may have IT managers or product folks that are switching out product owners or switching out team members, and the team can't get any momentum. And it's just really difficult for anyone to get any momentum on the team level if you have people that are kind of messing it up above. So you have to work at that level naturally to avoid the impediment, but also make sure that you're handing off the operations of the team to someone that's qualified and actually understands the mindset.
Amazing. And last question for this part of the podcast that I have for you is, what advice, wrap-up advice do you have for a new Agilist, either that's a business system analyst, business analyst, Scrum Master, product owner, who want to kind of end up in a role like yours, which is an Agile Coach role?
Yeah, I think number one, just be an opportunist. Luckily, I actually didn't go searching for my first Agile Coach role. I just had my LinkedIn open. I've always been a little bit of an opportunist. So I got a call from a recruiter about an Agile Coach role. I knew that I had been doing those roles and responsibilities, or at least maybe 90% of them, in different places for a bit of time. So I was like, well, let me try it. And within that, don't be scared to get out of your comfort zone. Worst case scenario, at least for me, it was like, well, I can step into this for 6 months. Maybe I don't know what to expect, and maybe it's over my head and I'm overwhelmed, but I get 6 months of experience out of this. Even if I only last 6 months, I get 6 months of experience on how to be a coach. I can come in, I can learn from people, I can ask questions, I can get the lay of the land. And even if that particular role doesn't work out, I am definitely able to have a better chance of success in the next role because I was able to pursue it. And I think additionally, find someone that is in the position that you want. Their Agile Coach is not by any means the only position in agility. You have program managers, and in some corporations, you have project managers, or you might have director roles if you're ultra ambitious. So I think just figuring out someone that has the results that you want and asking them how they got to their position is pretty relevant, because, as a coach, I'm going to be biased towards that path, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other positions that might be a better fit for other people. And it's pretty easy to get there if you find people that are there and can help.
All right, that's a wrap with this episode. Thank you for listening till the end. We hope these podcasts are providing value on your Agile journey. If you haven't visited our website, theagilecoach.com, we highly suggest you for other courses and supporting material on your journey. You can also get access to our self-paced courses or learn more about the live training that we provide to become a Scrum Master, product owner, product manager. With that, we will see you on the next episode. Love and best wishes from the Agile Coach.